Welcome to the Asia Climate Finance podcast, where our host and expert guests delve into and scrutinize the pressing issues and emerging trends in climate business and climate finance. We greatly appreciate your support. Please like, review, and subscribe to the podcast to help us grow and reach a wider audience. Be sure to take note of the disclaimers at the conclusion of each show. And now, here is your host, investor, analyst, and author, Joseph Giacobelli.
Hey there! Welcome to episode 59 of the Asia Climate Finance podcast. This episode is a little bit different. Human resources are key to the growth of climate business and climate finance, in my personal view. So I called on an old friend, Seth Peterson, to provide some insights. Seth is a senior executive at Korn Ferry in Hong Kong and has been in Asia for decades. Now, Korn Ferry, for those of you not familiar with the firm, is one of the biggest management consulting firms in the world. In the discussion with Seth, he explains how AI and in-house recruitment are revolutionizing executive search in Asia's energy transition sector. He highlights how, despite the current market slowdown in China, demand for ESG and sustainability talent in the Asia-Pacific region is still quite strong. He also notes how corporate culture and purpose emerge as key differentiators in attracting top executives. Seth also forecasts AI expertise and data science becoming critical skills going forward, while emphasizing that traditional career building remains absolutely fundamental. His insights highlight the dual challenge companies face, embracing technological innovation while maintaining strong organizational values to secure future talent. I hope you enjoyed the discussion. Hello there, Seth. Thank you so much for making the time for the Asia Climate Finance podcast. So excited to have you.
Yeah, it's great to be with you.
Let's start maybe with a personal introduction. Could you tell us a bit about your career journey in Asia, Seth?
Love to. And thanks again for the opportunity. So my background from the middle of the U.S. actually hadn't been overseas until age 16. I was an exchange student to Melbourne for a year and did my fifth form there. But after that year, that opened me up to international, and I decided to study Chinese in college in the States, and then some studied abroad in Taiwan in 1989 for a semester. And then when I graduated in 91, I had a research fellowship for a year to do, I had to spend 12 months outside the US, traveled around doing research on overseas Chinese communities. And then I'd been to Hong Kong a number of times at that point since being a student and on my research and so forth. So when it was time to start my career in 1992, I got a one-way ticket and brought my suitcases and landed in accommodation in Tsim Sha Tsui and started my career ultimately in strategy consulting. And then that took me to Shanghai in 94. And I spent 4.5 years in Shanghai, initially with a strategy consulting firm, but then moved into industry. I worked for Emerson Electric for about 9 years, initially in China and then in headquarters in St. Louis. And then that brought me back to Hong Kong. I've been in Hong Kong now since 2000 this time, and hard to believe it's been 25 years. But yeah, and I made a mid-career change 15 years ago now. As I was approaching 40, I decided to take a sabbatical from corporate industry work. And I did some independent consulting for a while. Wanted to spend more time in Hong Kong. In those days, we traveled every week. And our second child was arriving. My wife has her own career. And so I took a break, did some independent consulting. And I had known some friends in executive search over the years who seemed to have a good life. And I I thought it would be an interesting direction at some stage. I wasn't sure about the timing, having been on a general management career track at that point. But as I explored it further, I liked the variety. I liked being able to spend more time in Hong Kong. So I sort of reinvented myself back into professional services. And here we are 15 years later. I spent 7 years with Heidrick and Struggles in the industrial practice, and now with Korn Ferry I'm in my 7th year. And Korn Ferry is not only executive search. I lead the industrial practice in the region, and I oversee across our lines of business, but I personally do executive search assignments from the board and C-suite and heads of functions, mostly in Hong Kong, Greater China, but some of our key account relationships as well.
A lot of people will have heard of Korn Ferry, but for those not familiar with Korn Ferry, could you just share a little bit about the firm and perhaps give us an overview of what it means to be an executive search consultant? And could you also in particular explain your work with corporations in the industrial sector related to sustainability, the energy sector, and the like?
Sure. So Korn Ferry has its origins. It started in 1969 in Los Angeles by Mr. Korn and Mr. Ferry, who came out of I think it was Pete Morwick, one of the big four in those days. And they got into this business and then it grew. And particularly in the last, say, 15 years through acquisitions, Korn Ferry has broadened from executive search to mid-level and volume recruitment with different lines of business beyond executive search, such as we call professional search or also recruitment process outsourcing, RPO. And those are all under this umbrella of talent acquisition. And then we have another side of our business, which is broadly called HR or organizational consulting. And that spans things around organization strategy, talent assessment and succession, leadership and professional development, and rewards and benefits. And so that's all in addition to the talent acquisition piece, which I mentioned. And so that gives me as an executive search consultant a lot more to bring to my client conversations. So as I say, on a day-to-day basis, I am doing a combination of serving my existing clients, developing new client relationships, and try and bring the best of Korn Ferry to those clients to help them with all of the things that are happening in their businesses where talent meets a business strategy. And in particular, industrial sector that is the broadest, we're the largest as well globally and in the region within Korn Ferry, but we span everything from energy and infrastructure and engineering, construction and infrastructure through transportation, logistics, and distribution, as well as automotive and all sorts of subsectors across industrial manufacturing, chemicals to capital equipment to automation, et cetera. And so the energy transition and sustainability, those areas actually also span a lot of different subsectors, from electric utilities to alternative and renewables to equipment suppliers, and then sustainability as a function. Sustainability and ESG obviously has had a lot of attention in recent years as well.
Right. Moving, if I could, Seth, to the industry trends, how has the recruitment process evolved over the past 5 or 10 years in the industrial sector in general, and then after the evolution, what are the current trends?
There's definitely been a lot of disruption, I will say that, with a combination. That's a continuous thing, continuous sort of disruption and increased complexity and pace and so forth. But so in recruitment in particular, one of the threats to or trends and just realities really is the advent of in-house talent acquisition. That's one of the key trends that I would say is that our clients do make buy decisions or not, but decide, well, we're going to build an in-house capability, an in-house team, rather than pay outside service providers to support our recruitment efforts. So that is very widespread now in most companies, various shapes and forms and sizes. But But typically, and often those in-house talent acquisition, those could be the people that for certain levels of recruitment that then come to us for certain roles where it's confidential and or it's a succession exercise, or they have been unsuccessful on their own or unsuccessful through other channels. And so they can still be our clients. That's one trend. The other trend is the use of AI. And there's just an increased, and this is something that's very much real time in process, including with our own firm, is understanding the AI features and functionality in different platforms and how to utilize that to basically, there's a lot of AI enablement happening with AI champions in our firm and also, I think, across our client base. It's certainly a productivity tool, can increase efficiency and so forth in the recruitment process.
When you're talking about these companies, if I could just clarify one point, when you're talking about a corporation to build the internal capabilities, but when it comes to everything, sustainability, ESG, energy transition, just transition in general, that's something pretty new. I mean, internally, people will not necessarily have had that experience, right? So is there a little bit of an exception for that particular area, or are companies also trying to build that capability in-house?
It definitely, we see that energy transition has been a theme and a reality for now already a number of years. And so our clients who have established their own capabilities to support that from a recruiting standpoint, but if they are, oftentimes they need to supplement and augment their own in-house capabilities with outside support. So they will come to us and for support with some of those efforts.
Got it. Well, in your view, what's the biggest challenges that companies face in attracting and retaining talent right now in the industrial sector and energy transition, et cetera?
Well, to some extent, there are the company nature, the product nature, broadly, not only in the energy transition, but this can be a consideration for candidates. Say, for example, if you're talking about fossil fuels, some candidates don't want to work in certain sorts of companies. Location is definitely a consideration. And where I'm based in Hong Kong, there have been challenges to bring talent in. For people who are not as familiar with Hong Kong, for example, it kind of gets caught up in some of the geopolitics and the perception that maybe it's not as good a place for if a family's settled in Singapore, kids in school and so forth, challenges to move people. Employee value proposition that a company has, the company culture, DEI, core values and ways of working. These are all things that are important for companies, as well as professional development and career progression opportunities. These are important areas for companies to be able to attract and retain talent, for sure.
Mm-hmm. As you pointed out, the energy transition has increasingly, or sustainability, ESG, impact investing, all of those things have become a little bit more prominent in recent years, and we've also seen some regulatory changes related to that. So, for example, now companies a lot of companies, at least in the Asia Pacific region, have to have climate reporting in their annual reports, etc. So, are there any other significant regulatory changes or economic factors that are affecting recruitment of senior executive in the industrial sector right now?
Well, I think in addition to ESG related reporting or investor sort of pressures to be more sustainable and so forth, you have disruption from AI. We see headlines of companies like Chevron cutting thousands of jobs. I think some of that is AI related. You see now my colleagues in India are busy helping to set up tech centers for say, oil majors, and for example, as they put analytics, data analytics, and back office capabilities in those locations. So these are some of the, I don't know if they're regulatory changes, but economic factors that are affecting recruitment. Locally here in Hong Kong, we see, for example, the Hong Kong talent scheme. So since I mentioned earlier, some of the challenges with the perception of Hong Kong or attracting talent to come to Hong Kong. So the government has proactively introduced the various talent schemes. So far, a lot of that has been taken up by mainland talent. So there are definitely a lot more Mandarin speakers. I work in Central and Hong Kong, and much more Mandarin than ever before. But that's been a trend for quite some time, but now more than ever, particularly with the talent scheme. And it is attractive as we talk to mainline candidates. And I think clients oftentimes are asking us specifically for Hong Kong based roles, collaboratively we're looking at. They may have their own schemes. They're going to Tsinghua in Beijing or wherever in Guangdong, whichever universities, to try to attract certain talent to come to Hong Kong because there's maybe a shortage of certain engineering talent, for example. And there've been these outbound migrations in Hong Kong specifically following 2019 unrest and COVID and so forth. So there have been, we know the numbers of people that have left Hong Kong, and that needs to be replenished. And so mainland's been a good source of some of that talent.
Got it. Moving to talking about just the market in general, and I just got one question on that. What's the current demand for professionals in the industrial sector related or not related to the energy transition and sustainability? And also, are there any kind of specific areas which are experiencing high demand or shortages?
Yeah, I say it varies, but the market I would say generally recruiting has been soft, particularly China has been soft, but with multinationals across the region, things have been soft, based on year-over-year comparisons and so forth. And then with multinationals, containing headcount and headcount reductions and things of that nature. But, ESG reporting, sustainability, those have continued to be strong. Energy transition related. There's still investment in those areas across the region. I was going to say that India, for example, had been a beneficiary. There are certain beneficiaries of, again, you have to go and look sector by sector. Energy transition is not necessarily one that is a beneficiary of supply chain rebalancing from China to Southeast Asia or India, but there's certainly been that trend. And then I guess also, and my colleagues in the private equity sector and infrastructure fund sector, I know, are also keeping fairly busy helping investment funds or investee companies to find executives and or board members in various places, including, say, the Philippines, Vietnam, Taiwan, where, there have been alternative and renewables investments and so forth. Data scientists, quantitative technical specialists as well.
Understood. If we can move to kind of like, if you can get the dusty crystal ball out of your desk and talk a little bit about the outlook, given that you've been doing this for quite some time. What's your long-term outlook? And are there any emerging trends or disruptions that could impact recruitment in the future?
Yeah. Well, recently we've had a Talent Trends 2025 report that's available. I think I may have it on my LinkedIn. This is a Korn Ferry. LinkedIn has also put out an AI related report just recently. And increasingly AI is embedded in the LinkedIn and other platforms or other platforms that clients are using. These are all evolving with more built-in AI. And then large companies, multinationals and others are exploring generative AI in their talent management and succession planning and in all facets of their recruiting as well. So I think there's said at the outset, there's just increased disruption and complexity, particularly for the recruiting side of our business. But I can only say that thankfully Korn Ferry has expanded through acquisitions and continue to grow into non-recruitment areas, including something called Career Transition Services, CTS, which helps. Now that's so, for example, if there is a restructuring in a company and there are executives that are going to be made redundant as a consequence, Career Transition Services is often of interest to those companies as they help to try to support those executives with career transitions.
And are there any areas of expertise that may become more valuable in the next, 3, 5, or 10 years, if you were to predict something?
Definitely ability to use AI, including ourselves, right? Learning to understand how it can be a benefit and what it can and can't do, because it doesn't replace human judgment and so forth.
Right.
At least at this point. But so that tech data related roles, data scientists, architects, and so forth, or subject matter experts are areas that come to mind for sure.
Just a couple of things before we wrap up. Would you have any advice to companies that are looking to stay competitive in attracting and retaining talent in the industrial sector and or sustainability, energy transition, ESG, impact investing, etc.?
I mentioned earlier the employee value proposition and company culture. I think those are important areas for companies to be able to. It's not just about compensation. Candidates, executives want to be working for a company with purpose that they feel they can buy into, and then company culture in addition to the other areas around professional development, career progression, and things of that nature in terms of attracting and retaining talent. I think those are important.
And then I have a kind of, let's call it a sideline question, just because both of us have got kids who are looking for jobs or soon will be looking for jobs. Would you have any advice for young professionals who want to work in the industrial sector, and specifically in the sustainability and energy transition area?
Building the resume, building qualifications and experience is maybe old-fashioned, but I also think having a career, having some respectable training early in one's career with a reputable or known and well-regarded organization, I think sets one up well for one's career, as well as just having that. I think having continuity, and there's a startups and so forth, and the I guess Generation X or the millennials, the different considerations, different priorities, but accumulating experience, some stability early in one's career, I think is important. Not moving around too much, trying to find a place that one can commit to for a number of years to build a credible base of experience, because there's a view, I think, that if you're in an organization for less than 2 or 3 years, it's questionable how much you can learn and or contribute. So that's part of my advice to young people. Consulting can also be a good training ground early in one's career, if there some area of management consulting, to get variety, learn business problems, learn analysis, learn to work in teams, learn to work quickly under pressure, those sorts of things. Consulting can be a good training ground, or any good corporate track, management trainee type of track.
No, that's great. That's great. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think energy transition in this part of the world will continue to be, despite all of the recent noise in the global world order, will continue to be an important opportunity for people to develop their careers in, and it's changing so quickly, and so becoming part of it and growing and learning with it. I guess that's my final advice for people.
Fantastic. Well, listen, Seth, I know you're very busy with lots of meetings and stuff, so I really, really appreciate your time and your insights. So thank you so much.
Pleasure, Joseph. I really enjoyed it and look forward to continuing to follow your podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Asia Climate Finance Podcast. Please be advised that this podcast is presented for educational purposes only. None of the information provided should be construed in any way as investment advice. Always consult with a licensed investment professional before making any investment decisions. Additionally, please note that the views and opinions expressed by our guests are personal and may not reflect the views and opinions of their current or previous employers.